it's just for you all to note that the public section of the meeting, which is actually the whole agenda, we've nothing in confidence today, will be recorded and published online so that the public are able to access the meeting afterwards and see the discussions that have taken place. So can I start by asking that all members of the board switch off their cameras and mute their microphones if they're not speaking. And the camera and microphone should only be switched on when you're invited to speak. And if you would like to speak, can I ask that you indicate by using the raised hand function, because that's the easiest way for me to keep track of it. If you're not able to use that, then maybe if you can just type something in the chat and Emma will maybe keep me right on if anybody's coming in on that basis, but the hand raising would be the best plan for that. Now, I'll hand over to Emma Robertson now, who will take a roll call, just so that we've got that on record for the tape and we know who's here today. And also, I think Emma will run through apologies, and indeed we've a number of substitutes, I think, today, which is good that we've got representation, and Emma will just run through that for us. So over to you, Emma. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Bruce Fackerson, substitute Chi Ewing, Richard McCallum, Sandra McLeod, Ken Milroy, Paul O'Connor, substitute Sarah Chu, Jonathan Smith, substitute Lavina Massey, Professor Wells, substitute Heather Crabb, and Susan Webb has advised that she's running late. And so I'll just do a roll call now for the recording. If you could just answer your name, please, when it's called. Councillor Lane, Chair.
Present.
Councillor Wheeler.
Yes, here.
Councillor Alex Nichol.
Present.
Councillor Gregg.
Here.
Angela Scott.
Here.
George MacDonald.
Present.
Caroline Hiscox.
Present.
Susan Webb, don't think is here yet. Luan Grujon.
Yes, hello, I'm here.
Thank you. Chi Ewing.
Present.
Gordon McDougall.
Present.
Sarah Chu.
Present.
Lavina Massey. I know Lavina's here.
Yeah, she is here. She's maybe got trouble with her mute.
Okay. Alistair Robertson.
Present.
And Heather Crabb.
Yes, here.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Emma. OK, that takes us on to declarations of interest. Does any members have a declaration to make at this point? Not seeing any hands raised. OK, I'll take it that not currently, so thank you for that. That then takes us on to item 1.1, which is the minute of the previous meeting, which took place on the 28th of April. It's here for approval. There was one item where additional information was sought. I think it was in relation to item 8. That was circulated by email to members of the board earlier this week. Are we content with the minute? Any issues on that, or can we agree the minute? I'm not seeing anybody indicating, so I'll take that's agreement. That then takes us on to item 1.2, which is the minute of the management group, which is here for information. Any questions or queries on that? No, not seeing any hands. Thank you. And then 1.3, which is the forward planner, which again is here for agreement. Any difficulties with that, or can we agree the content of the planner? I'll take that as an agreement. That then takes us on to item 2.1, which is the final draft of the local outcome improvement plan and for 2016 to 2026, and the community planning Aberdeen development plan for 2021 to 2022. Now, what we're going to do folks, is we'll start with an introduction from Michelle and some of our thematic group leads, and then I will open it up for questions after that. So Michelle, can I hand over to you and just to introduce the paper for me, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. We've got a presentation by colleagues set up for you this afternoon, but we wanted to start with a video that Alison is going to share and play on her screen. So Alison, if I can ask you to do that just now, please.
The arrival of the COVID-19 pandemic just over a year ago impacted on the well-being of our people in place like never before. At a local level, our response brought into sharp focus the value of partnership working, and in doing so, reaffirmed the essential rightness of the Local Outcome Improvement Plan, or as we like to call it, the LOIP. Ensuring Aberdeen's continued economic, health and social recovery is the focus of this refreshed LOIP for 2021. The LOIP is all about partnership working. That's why we're working with employers across the city to teach skills and help people into meaningful work with a good living wage.
My name is Rebecca Davidson. I am 21 years old and I'm a care experienced young person. I'm doing a Kickstart internship for Aberdeen City Council. Through the Local Outcome Improvement Plan to help care experienced young people into employment, I have been able to secure this internship and gain valuable skills and experience that will help me in my future.
The LOIP refresh, along with our new locality plans, marks a maturing of how we are working together to make life better for everyone. Through the LOIP, we are reaching out to our people, communities and businesses to harness their talent and resourcefulness.
Economic and environmental success must be translated into social success, lifting people out of poverty and offering an equal opportunity for all.
There's been evidence of a significant rise in the number of people experiencing mental health problems during COVID, with some of the most affected being young people as well as those with protected characteristics. In addition, lockdown restrictions have impacted developmental milestones for very young children. We have 9 stretch outcomes within the LOIP which will see us take forward projects in direct support of children, young people, families and vulnerable people facing such difficulties.
The world has changed, but our core purpose has not. Putting people and place first by considering welfare in the widest possible sense. That's what the LOIP embodies, and this refresh could not be more timely.
Thank you for that. Hopefully everyone can see my screen now. I think that's a lovely video and it really sets the scene for our presentation this afternoon. As I said, I'm joined by 4 colleagues representing the 6 outcome improvement groups which have been responsible for refreshing the economy, people and place sections of the LOIP. Now they'll take you through the change to those sections in a bit more detail. But first I wanted to remind you of the process we've gone through to bring this refreshed LOIP to you today. So you'll recognise this slide, which I presented to you a year ago when we met for the first time following the COVID-19 breakout. And we agreed at that time that we would need to revise the LOIP to ensure it remained relevant in light of the pandemic and the new challenges it presented. And this was our 1 year timeline, or route map, as we called it, to today. So I'm proud to say that a year on, we've completed all our key milestones and on time. Now, you'll all appreciate that this timeline only hints at the work that's gone on over the last 9 months, right across the partnership and at all levels by colleagues to get us to this point. This is our second refresh of the LOIP since it was published in 2016. So I won't take you through the process that you're so familiar with in any detail, but I did want to draw out some areas which I think have been a bit different this time round. The first is our use of data and insights, which I think continues to improve. Our population needs assessment has developed to incorporate insights and predictions, as well as commentary on published and available data. Now, this was really important, as we know that in many cases, the impact of COVID is not yet evident from the official data sets. Our use of data during COVID demonstrated the value of using real-time data, which might not be perfect, but good enough to ensure we're acting fast to respond to greatest need. And we've taken a similar approach to the PNA, using the official data as well as insights from partners and from communities to give us a more authentic view of what's going on in the here and now. This, as well as data from our Aberdeen Outcomes Framework and improvement projects, has provided a robust evidence base for this refreshed LOIP. I also wanted to highlight our approach to engaging and working with communities. We've been heavily invested in working with communities in our most deprived areas through our priority neighbourhood partnerships. But with this refresh of the LOIP, we've extended an invitation to communities right across the city to have their say in what they think are the priorities for the partnership. This year we introduced the public simulator and heard back from people living in the city that we would not have heard from before, sharing not only their opinions, but their ideas for change and improvement. And for those interested in getting involved further, we've opened our door through our new locality empowerment groups, which are open to all members of the public who want to make a positive difference to their local community. And although not new, I also wanted to mention the ongoing role of our Civic Forum representatives who commit their time to being involved in the outcome improvement groups and their contribution to the refresh process. And one community rep from the Civic Forum has actually put themselves forward to lead on one of our new LOIP improvement projects. And I think that just shows how confidence levels have increased. The final element that I wanted to touch on was the development plan, which we're presenting to you along with the LOIP today. This brings together all of the strands of work that go alongside the LOIP to enable partners to work more effectively together and to ensure they have the skills and the support they need to deliver our revised improvement aims. So that's all from me, and now I'm going to hand over to Derek McGowan.
Thanks, Michelle. For the introduction, I'm going to talk for the next couple of minutes around the new, the proposed new stretch outcome 1, which is around no one will suffer due to poverty. It's proposed as a new stretch outcome. While we accept that the whole LOIP is about preventing and minimising the impact of poverty on the city, the COVID-19 pandemic has pushed more people into poverty. I think we all would accept that and understand that there's been a change in the city socially in terms of how people have been able to respond. And so this new stretch outcome is about tackling the immediate and acute consequences of poverty and ensuring no one is left alone to suffer. There is a recognition that the projects within it could have sat under a number of themes, but we felt it was important to bring them together and we've put it up front to signal its importance, recognising our ambition and aspirations for our communities in the city. Next slide, please, Michelle. And the improvement projects within the stretch outcome that's proposed aim to ensure people have access to food, shelter, finance and fuel. Some of the projects within the proposal include work on community pantries, looking at in-work poverty through benefits, financial assessments being available for homeless people, and also looking at equalities, not just protected characteristics, but social equality as well. For example, citing the evidence that women in Black and minority ethnic communities have been pushed furthest from the labour market, and targeting support for them. The proposal, if approved by you all today, is that we establish a new anti-poverty outcome group to oversee delivery of the projects under the stretch outcome and build on the work of the current welfare reform group, which was first established to support the city in the transition to universal credit. That aim has been achieved, but the partners around that table have so much more to offer in terms of taking this work forward. And thank you. I'll now hand over to Ishbel Gregg, who will talk about other stretch outcomes under the economy theme of Deloitte. Thank you.
Thanks, Derek. Hi everyone, I'm Ishbel Gregg and I'm the lead contact for Aberdeen Prospers. I'm standing in today on behalf of Alison Carrington, the chair, and Duncan Abernethy, the vice chair of Aberdeen Prospers, who both send their apologies. So I'll cover the Aberdeen Prospers stretch outcomes, which also sit in the economy section. So the economy section now has 3 outcomes as opposed to the 2 which were in the previous version. So Derek has just gone over stretch outcome 1. So I'll cover stretch outcomes 2 and 3. So the aim for stretch outcome 2 is 400 unemployed Aberdeen City residents supported into fair work by 2026. So we're using the Scottish Government Fair Work Action Plan definition of fair work, which is work that offers effective voice, opportunity, security, fulfilment and respect, that balances the rights and responsibilities of employers and workers, that can generate benefits for individuals, organisations and society. So we know that COVID-19 has had a significant impact on the jobs landscape, and according to the ONS Labour Force Survey, there have been an estimated 53,600 employee reported redundancies in Scotland between March and November 2020. So since the previous version of the Deloitte, we've widened the scope a little bit as well. This only identified growth sectors as being a priority, but getting people into jobs in all sectors is important. And this will also include growth sectors. Creating new employment opportunities remains a top priority for our communities. Feedback from the locality empowerment group sessions and also from the simulator showed this. Our projects aim to support the recovery of the labour market, helping people get into sustained fair work, in particular in our most disadvantaged communities. So projects include helping people come off the benefit system to start up a business, focus on employment for over 50s and people from priority neighbourhoods, and a project which aims to make Aberdeen a real living wage place. So we can just move on to the next slide and stretch outcome 3. Stretch outcome 3 is 500 Aberdeen City residents upskilled and reskilled to enable them to move into, within and between economic opportunities as they arise by 2026. So this stretch outcome is all about skills and training. Creating new training opportunities also remains a top priority from our communities, and that came from feedback from the leg sessions and the simulator as well. So our projects aim to ensure people have the digital skills and qualifications they need to take advantage of future opportunities, also supporting our young people to complete modern and graduate apprenticeships, and finally ensuring that all communities benefit from inclusive economic growth. At the end of April 2021, almost 270,000 people in Scotland were on furlough, and we know that many people will have to upskill or reskill for future jobs. Data shows that Aberdeen City and Shire appears to be a more vulnerable region, as job losses are likely in the hospitality and engineering sectors. And we've experienced a double whammy with COVID-19 and the oil and gas downturn. So upskilling and reskilling will be vital for jobs in a post-COVID landscape. I'll now hand over to Graham Simpson, who will talk about how we will support our children and young people.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Chair of the Children's Services Board, I'm pleased to introduce the children's section of our people. The priority and ambition to ensure children, young people and their families prosper continues to be reflected in the refreshed LOIP, with 40% of the stretch outcomes focusing on improvements that can improve the outcomes for our children and young people. Next slide, Michelle. Broadly, the stretch outcomes remain focused on the same 6 areas. Firstly, ensuring the best start in life to supporting children reach expected developmental milestones. Secondly, ensuring that we listen to the mental health needs of our children and young people. Thirdly, that our care experienced young people achieve the same levels of attainment in education, health and emotional well-being and positive destination as their peers. The fourth stretch outcome retains a strong focus on supporting our young people from priority neighbourhoods achieve and sustain positive destinations when leaving school. The fifth aim affects children, reflects the importance of children's rights, giving voice to children in decision making, and these have been highlighted in the promise and the decision to incorporate the UNCRC into Scots law. Therefore, our continued ambition to achieve child-friendly status remains highly relevant. And the sixth area, while acknowledging a drop in youth offending, we want to continue to build on the work and success and have a focus on that we have done to date. I'm not going to go into each of those 6 areas, but I want to focus on 2. So Michelle, if you could move on to the next slide. The first area I want to focus is the stretch outcome that reflects to the mental health and well-being of our children and young people. We have adjusted this slightly to reflect the fact that 90% of our children and young people will report their experiences have been listened to, and the really importance of ensuring that our staff are trained and equipped to respond to their mental health needs as they are presented and communicated by our children and young people. Next slide, Michelle. The impact of the pandemic on children and young people's mental health has been well publicised. Increased demand on CAM services, increased levels of social isolation for some of our young people, increased levels of eating disorders for some of our young people as well. So therefore, we want to ensure that actually our young people and our families have timely access to support, and the development and implementation of the Fit Like hubs across Aberdeen City are a key drive in ensuring that timely access to support, not just for the young person, but taking that whole family, that whole holistic needs of the young person and their family as well. We also recognise there has been an increase in reporting of eating disorders amongst our young people, particularly amongst young females. And so therefore we want to ensure that our staff and our services are equipped to respond to that need as it presents, to ensure early and positive intervention when it comes. Our young people have also told us that actually they often prefer to engage through digital means rather than that face-to-face. And we want to build upon our experiences and successes that we've achieved over the last 2 years, developing our online presence and engagement with young people, using, for example, the Mind of My Own app to engage with our young people. So really building on means of early and accessible means by which young people can ensure their mental health needs are made known to relevant and the correct professionals, and we respond appropriately to those as well. Happy to move on, Michelle. The second stretch outcome I want to have a slight focus on is the stretch outcome relating to youth justice. As you can see, there has been a significant drop in the numbers of young people charged with an offence over the past number of years, although recognising during the last reported year there has been a slight increase. So the previous stretch outcome reflected that 20% of young people, there'd be a 20% reduction of young people charged with an offence. So we've actually achieved that already. So we want to stretch that further to actually making that 30% going forward. So again, Michelle, happy to move on. I can speak a bit more about what we're going to do to support young people and to achieve this reduction. The promise published in 2020 reflected the need to ensure that 16 and 17-year-olds were not who had committed an offence were not dealt with by the courts, but rather their needs were far better dealt with through the children's hearing system. And so therefore we want to build upon the diversion from prosecution and diversion from the justice system for as many of our young people as we can to reflect this change in legislation that is going to come forward over the coming year, and support young people to adapt without going through the justice system as it presents. But we also recognise ensuring getting the right support to the young people at the right time is absolutely fundamental, and ensuring early and effective intervention is critical to preventing a continuation of criminal behaviours. And the role of the Youth Justice Management Unit in ensuring and identifying that early and effective intervention is absolutely critical. So we want to build upon the success of this to date. We also recognise the strong correlation between antisocial behaviour and poverty. One doesn't necessarily lead to the other, but there is nonetheless a strong correlation. And in our efforts to tackle antisocial behaviour, we want to take a holistic look at the needs of our young people and their families to ensure and identify where poverty is a factor and how we can actually support them to engage in activities to better make use of their time, but also to actually combat the stress of living in poverty that often has on family. So there's lots to do for the Children's Services Board and the outcome groups that sit underneath it, and we're excited by the challenges that we have presented to yourselves today through the refresh LOIP. I'm however going to hand back to Derek, who's going to take you on to look at the next section, which will look at the adults within this.
Thanks, Graham. So I'm going to work through the community justice, resilient, included, supported and ADP sections. First one to look at is a general overview. Graham's outlined well there that a number of the projects that were previously in the community justice outcome improvement group have moved under ICS board, so they're part of overall children and young persons planning, and that links to youth justice. So within the community justice, we've merged two of the previous stretch outcomes to create stretch outcome 10, which looks at reducing the number of people receiving a first ever court conviction and a reduction in recidivism and related to that. So if we can move on to stretch outcome 10, please. You'll see there in the chart that's presented that there has been a reduction over the last few years in the number of people receiving first ever court convictions, and that strikes or shows the success rather of diversion from prosecution work that's already been ongoing and is well embedded, but we want to continue to work on that. But you'll also see there's been an increase in people over 18 years reconvicted within a year, and that's the latest data that's available, and that has risen. So the work we're doing is focusing on these areas and looking at recidivism and engagement with services, looking at employability services, supporting people being liberated from prison, looking at drugs deaths within 6 months of liberation from prison, and making sure people have the right level of support in the community to help them transition. We also have projects in there around hate crime reporting and investigation, and also domestic abuse, and then I think a really important one, which is mental health support being available within the criminal justice system for people. Excuse me. So yes, we're looking at support to engage in hate crime. We think the projects are well targeted now. It makes sense to have moved some of them into the ICS board, as Graham's outlined. So quite a tight and quite focused piece of work through community justice that's proposed. If you move on to stretch outcome 11, we're seeing a downward trajectory in healthy life expectancy. And that's not positive at all. You'll see the trend there on the chart. And so we are still looking to work on that, look to reverse that trend and reaching the levels we saw 5 years ago, where that healthy life expectancy was longer. In order to do that, we have a number of projects in there looking at supporting vulnerable and disadvantaged people, reducing loneliness and social isolation, and encouraging healthier lifestyles. Some of the projects include supporting unpaid carers, reducing youth homelessness, and working to reduce suicides, also looking to support volunteering and increase healthier lifestyles within the community as well. If we can move on to stretch outcome 12. This is for alcohol and drug partnership. You'll see there that the percentage of people drinking to hazardous and harmful levels has reduced. We want to continue that. But as we know, locally and nationally, there is a real issue with drugs deaths and the rate of drugs deaths, and we're real focus on that. Obviously, nationally, there is a drugs death task force, and we're looking to follow that as effectively as we can. So the stretch outcome on alcohol and drugs remains the same. We're looking at support for children and young people at risk. We're looking at changing attitudes towards alcohol and early intervention and recovery. So projects in this area include young people having access to evidence-based practice for support, reducing the use of illicit substances by 13 to 15-year-olds, increasing responsible alcohol consumption rates, looking at early intervention and preventative treatment, for example, alcohol brief interventions, continuing the rollout of them and the number of staff and people across the city that are able to do them, and project on naloxone to try and reduce the risk of opiate overdose. So that covers those 3 areas. I'm now going to hand over to Gillian Evans.
Afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to talk through some of the developments and developing thinking in our sustainable environment and place. We're still continuing our focus very much on sustainability, environmental sustainability particularly. A lot of the feedback that we've had through the simulator has been encouragement about looking at our environment. So we're encouraged by that. And I've really set about trying to develop our thinking even more this time round. So stretch outcomes 13, 14, 15 are all about environment. They're all interlinked. They're all about protecting, preserving the environment for nature and for people and for the sustainability of our place. So just looking at climate change in particular, Michelle, if that's okay, just to go into that one. Climate change, we're sitting here in the middle of a third wave of a pandemic. Can we really afford to stop and look at climate change? And the answer to that, of course, is yes, because it matters now, right now, and it matters in the future. And we know that Scotland's got tremendously ambitious targets and ambition for the reduction of carbon emissions and adaptation. So we're taking up that mantle, and although a lot of the changes that occur for climate change are technologies like land use and so on, a lot of it is about behaviour change too, and that's by and large, that's the focus of our collective efforts in community planning. So building on the successes of community and collective ownership that we've engendered throughout the pandemic, building on that to try to build resilience, protect and preserve our environment. On to the next slide, please, Michelle, if that's okay. Walking and cycling, what a challenge we got back from the consultation process on this, with many people saying do more, definitely do more. And of course we know that walking and cycling has been a tremendous success during the pandemic and lockdown periods. Reverting back a little now, worryingly. So our ambition is to keep building on that. We're constrained a little about naming our targets as being around main mode of travel. Actually, what we want to do is to get more people doing these things in preference to anything else where they can. So this year we'll be looking at trying to establish new data which helps us get a better benchmark for change and a focused effort on continuing to increase cycling and walking in our communities. And it's not just about, obviously, walking and cycling, it's about all of the community around and what helps you and enables you to walk and cycle within your community. My next area, my last area, is about biodiversity. So this is new for us now. We focused last year, all of the years that we've been doing this, we've been focused very much on green spaces for people, and we'll continue with that. And there's lots more we're doing there, which connects up with other aspects of the LOIP, particularly around food poverty and so on, growing food. But our ambition this time and again supported by the feedback that we've had through the consultation process, is about looking at and protecting our area for nature. And nature, which is not just about nice walks and fluffy animals, far from it. It underpins everything that humanity depends on. I know I'm bigging this up, but it is really important, from clean air and water, food, raw materials, medicines, nurturing our mental and physical health. This is really important. So our work is about looking at how we can increase and build on some of the change that we've seen amongst people who've really engaged with nature during the pandemic, which has benefited their mental health, but has benefited biodiversity. So there are many mutual benefits by targeting our efforts in this way. So growing food, working with people to enjoy green spaces, and getting our organisations to really step up and support all of our efforts, being ambassadors in their own way, and demonstrating just how important this is for our city. That's it from me. Thanks very much. Back to Michelle, I think.
Thank you very much for that, Gillian, and to all the speakers. So that's the end of our presentation. So I think we'll just hand over to you if there are any questions you have.
Thanks very much, Michelle, and thanks to everybody that's contributed there. I think that was really useful to just put a bit of meat on the bones through that presentation to the papers that the board have got before us. Before I open it up to questions, I just wanted to make a few comments myself. It was really just to express my thanks to all those who've been involved in bringing forward the refreshed LOIP and the development plan, which will complement the LOIP and help us to deliver on the outcomes that we want to achieve. I think we've seen from the presentation just how much work has gone in over the last year in order to get us to this stage. And I suppose my reflection would be, having been the chair of the board when we went through the refresh a couple of years ago, you can't underestimate that amount of work, but particularly given that we've been dealing with a worldwide pandemic as well. And I know a lot of people who've been involved in making sure that the engagement was there with communities, making sure that we were pushing forward with the improvement plans that we currently have in place, have also been involved in that response to the pandemic. So we can't underestimate the amount of effort and work that's gone in. I think, I've mentioned there about the consultation, and I think it's clear from the figures that are within the report, the level of engagement that we've had with the public and communities has, it surpasses anything we've seen before. And we should be heartened by that. I think that people want to get involved. They want to make sure that they're playing a part in shaping up the local outcome improvement plan as we're moving forward. I mentioned about COVID. You can see from some of the stark figures that our presenters have brought to the table today that the impact of COVID-19 has been significant on the city, both at a health, a social and an economic level. And I suppose it should inspire us as board members to ensure that we are playing our part within our organisations and collectively as a partnership to ensure that our response to that, and indeed the recovery that we will be leading in the coming months and years, will make sure that we are pulling together to achieve the outcomes that we've got within the LOIP. I think the work that we've done as a result of the COVID pandemic has also meant that we've worked more flexibly, we've worked at a greater pace, and we've been agile in our approach. And I would hope that they are all things that we can harness and use moving forward, because we need to ensure that the next 5 years of the local outcome improvement plan, that we are working as a partnership and a collective to achieve the goals, because there is no getting away from the fact that these are ambitious targets. But I do think if we work together, we can achieve that. I just have a couple of questions myself I wanted to put on the table, and then I'll bring in those who've got their hands up. But my first one was actually in relation to page 62, and it was, I think it's stretch outcome 10, and it's one of the improvement project aims. and it's about decreasing the number of incidents of domestic abuse reported to police by 15% by 2023. And I was just wondering about the wording of that, because I suppose it could be viewed in two different ways, that by reducing the numbers of reports to police, that reduces the number of incidents, but sometimes the two are not connected. And I suppose we've often strived to make sure that people are reporting these types of incidents so that action can be taken and they can be protected and supported. And I'm wondering about the language that we've used in relation to that. And I don't know, Derek, would it be you that would be able to maybe give a response to that one?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The intention is to reduce domestic abuse, so it's not about necessarily reporting as you suggest, but to reduce domestic abuse happening, stop it happening, reduce the likelihood of it happening. I'm trying to find the data here. The population needs assessment showed that there's perhaps been an increase, a slight increase in incidents of domestic abuse being recorded, but probably a decrease in recorded crimes. And it's trying to balance that data. I guess we're trying to do perhaps a slight decrease year on year in recorded crimes against incidents, and what we're trying to reflect on there, excuse me, is reverse that trend in terms of how often domestic abuse is happening. But I don't know if that answers your question.
So, I mean, that's obviously what I thought it was. It's just the language that's used there. I'm wondering if it's a bit ambiguous, but I think it might have been something, when I looked at the minute, I think it might have been raised at the management group as well. And I'm not sure, it mentioned there that you were maybe taking it back to the improvement group just to look at that. I'm not sure whether that had happened yet or not. But I mean, if it has and the improvement group are content with that, then fair enough with that explanation. I'd be happy with that. Okay, the second question I've got is in relation to the actual development plan, because I notice on page 84 that there is there's reference there to 2 of the lead contacts are vacant at present, and if we approve the recommendations today, we will also be approving a new anti-poverty group, and we would need a lead contact for that. Now, given the importance of having people in place and making sure the lead contacts are named so that we all know the responsibilities that the partners have to push forward with the work, can I just get some clarification whether those posts are still vacant or whether we've managed to fill them in the meantime?
Perhaps I can come back in, Chair. So Community Justice Lead Officer post has been filled. There's someone currently, as you started in the last month. And there, I understand the Alcohol and Drug Partnership one has been recruited too. That exercise is ongoing, so there should be someone in shortly. And if approved for Stretch Outcome 1 as part of the LOIP, then that process will happen pretty quickly to get someone into that position. That hasn't happened yet, pending ratification day.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr. McGowan. That's helpful to get that clarification, because as I say, I think as we're pushing forward with the new LOIP, it's good if we've got everybody in place right at the beginning, so we can just get moving with the work. So thank you for that. Okay, I think that's enough for me. I'll bring in Lavina Massey first, and then Luann Grusian's got her hand up. I'll bring Luann in second. Lavina.
Right, unmute. I got that bit right. Do I need to switch on the camera or no? Or do you? You said to switch off camera at the start of the meeting, so I did. Anyway, questions. I'm concerned about the economy. I've been a member of the economy group for many years, and I am concerned that we're not doing enough, fiddling around the edges. There's some things that Richard Sweetnam has done in his, but maybe you want to leave to some of this discussion to then. But there should be more strategic things coming into what we're doing in the economy and prosperous side of it, I feel. and the things that we discussed with Gillian Evans, in Gillian Evans' presentation. I am also a member of the environmental group, whatever you want to call it, Sustainable City Group. And the poverty thing was very much working on what was being done to help people grow food or through community schools, through other community bits of land they could get hold of, using the green spaces to help mental health, all sorts of things like that. And I very much approve of what Gillian was saying to that. I mean, I've been a green person long before green became a political thing, you know. I suppose because my work was to protect the marine environment, as I worked for many years to do. So I would like to see some of our projects coming a bit more, I don't know, strategic, as you might say, and look to see how, and I quite agree that we've done in our last meeting just a few days ago, looking to see how we could incorporate some of the things from the locality plans into the economic side of things. But I just feel there's lack of ambition in some of the things we're doing there, except for the broad number one project, which is nobody will suffer due to poverty of any sort. Yes, which is something that should be built into every stretch outcome, as far as I'm aware. As far as I know, my opinion is not. Yeah. I don't know if I'm being helpful or not, but I really would like to see something more coming from the economy side of things.
Okay, thank you for that, Lavinia. I mean, I think it is helpful to have your comments on the plan that we've got before us. A couple of things. I'll maybe bring in Ishbel. Richard Sweetenham hasn't been able to join us today. He might have been better placed to discuss around that economic piece. But just to say that obviously the socioeconomic recovery plan that we've got on the agenda later was clearly our immediate response to the COVID situation and how we made that recovery. And it covered both, as I mentioned there, the socio and economic recovery. But we did, as a result of that, bring a number of different partners round the table. And they will continue to be working within the community planning partnership framework, because it was important that we ensured we were embedding that work as we moved forward. And I think we will see more work and that evolving as we push on. I think the other thing we have to bear in mind is there are a lot of work going on with individual organisations as well, which are in relation to that economic piece and perhaps aren't truly reflected fully through the LOIP, which is about that partnership working that we're doing as well. As far as the poverty aspect goes, you're right. I mean, it's a bold outcome that we've put forward there. But I think it was important. We were trying to reflect, and just as you say, that poverty aspect touches lots of different areas right across the board. And it was important. The previous one related purely around the food poverty aspect. And I think it was important when we refreshed the LOIP that we took into account that poverty agenda, particularly with what we've heard from the presenters today and the information and data that's coming forward, the impact of poverty is hitting many aspects of people's lives and indeed many communities and individuals that it hasn't hit before. So it's important, I think, that that's reflected. Ishbel, I don't know whether you wanted to add anything around that economic piece.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to sort of echo what you've said around the rescue plan and really integrating that in the LOIP refresh, and as well with the rescue plan implementation group members, we have seen a number of them join Aberdeen Prospers, and others won't join the full outcome improvement group, but are already involved in projects wherever they can be. And just sort of around the level of ambition as well, we've had a number of discussions at Aberdeen Prospers over the last few months, taking into account all of the sort of feedback that we've received from the simulator, the consultation and stuff. And we have really looked at the environment, the jobs environment just now in Aberdeen, and we're stating what we think our aim is, but if things we manage to get that to that number, then we're just going to keep going as best as we can, and we just think that that's probably realistic, but still being a stretch at the minute.
Okay, thank you for that, Ishbel. Right, I'll bring in Luann next, and then I've got Gordon McDougall's got his hand up after that. So Luann.
Thank you. I have a few questions, if that's okay. I'll just start with my first one. It was the talk about recruitment there that sort of reminded me to ask about this. And I suppose I'm thinking in simplest terms that we know that wealth inequality leads to health inequality. So I wonder how well placed we are across the system to be proactive in offering good employment opportunities for people from our priority localities. And, you know, are we just on that journey at the beginning, or is there good examples of actually, you know, not just the City Council, but other partners as well, being really proactive in recruitment processes that support people with disadvantaged backgrounds getting into good employment? I know it's a broad question, but I just want to get a sense of where we are on that. And, you know, are we at the start of that journey, or you know, is there good examples of that working well so far?
Thanks, Luann. I think that's a really good question. Angela, did you want to come in on that one? I see your hand shot up there.
Yeah, just to try and be helpful, we've certainly, as individual agencies and as a collective, all adapted our practice around guaranteeing employment for care experience young people. So I think there's a consistency, Luann, across each agency around that. And we've coalesced as part of the Looked After Children's Champion Board. The Community Justice Group previously was attempting to do exactly the same in terms of ex-offending. We're probably slower behind the curve around all of that, but you know, I think that we're off the blocks, we're slightly on, but probably not as embedded. But again, I think each sovereign partner has their own employment sort of responsibility. So I guess that again, it's back to how do we all play our single agency, and then distinct from here, which is about Deloitte being more than just simply the sum of the parts. This is about what we do collectively. So I think in that agenda, Luann, we tried to coalesce the single agencies rather than kind of force and again, the care experience is a good example where each single system had some of its challenges. Each has then worked through that, and we've got to a final point where we do have some consistency around it. Hope that's helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Angela. It is.
Did you have more questions, Luann?
Yes, I did. So just two more things really. On the no one will suffer due to poverty, I could hear very much that I can see the actions, how they relate to people that have maybe been recently made unemployed because of oil and gas and because of the COVID experience. But I just wanted to get more of a sense of what about the people that were already living in poverty in our city that you know, is there a risk that we're forgetting about them because the focus is on people who previously were in employment and where poverty wasn't an issue? So I just wanted to get a sense of how that's being thought about. And I suppose also for some people, employment won't be a realistic option, people with multiple health issues, mental health problems. So just a bit of assurance that we're not forgetting about that group of people.
Okay, thanks. I'll bring Derek in on that one, Luann, just to answer the points that you've raised there.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Luann. Yeah, no one's been forgotten about here, absolutely not. The intention is that anyone who is suffering, anyone who is experiencing poverty will receive the support and the help that they need. So the projects that are in there look at community pantries. That's a good project and one that's already underway in some areas, and looking at fuel poverty, etc., unclaimed benefits. So this is for the community as a whole. This is whole population, as well as targeted population where that evidence might be available. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. And my final question, well, it's really just, I really like the video that was shown at the start, and coming to the meeting today, one of the things I wanted to say was how I think we need to be more proactive in explaining to the public and to staff what community planning is all about, because I really don't think a lot of people understand it. And so it was good to see that video as a you know sort of doing that. And for me, it's about simple messages, you know, something like we're a city that's intolerant of inequalities, or however we want to frame it. But the crucial thing is a call to action for people, that actually every single person in Aberdeen has got a role to play. It's not about services doing things or the police, or it's about everybody playing a role. So I wondered if there's thinking around a kind of planned campaign to engage the public and staff and to raise awareness of what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, I mean, I think you made a very valid point on that, and I'll bring Angela in. We kind of pulled that video together quite swiftly, and I have to say the bit that I thought was most effective, if I'm honest, sorry about this, George, was actually Rebecca's piece, because she was talking about her experience of what a difference community planning had made. And I think that's the type of thing that we need to be promoting as we move forward, so that people can actually see the tangible benefits of community planning and us working together and the difference that it can make. So, you know, I certainly think we should be looking at ways in which we can do that. I'll bring Angela in because she's got her hand up, and then we'll...
Thanks, Councillor Ling. Just a couple of points to highlight. Within the development plan, that there's an articulation about the desire on the part of the partnership to start to drive more public campaigns. So the points, Luann, that you're making about zero tolerance on particular stigmatised issues, that again, I think the development plan says the voice of the CPP could be amplified and really highlight some of the disparity that we see in the city for those with protected characteristics in particular. That's a kind of new space for the partnership to move in, and I think that it's not only the voice of us as statutory partners, but with colleagues like Lavina as part of this, then it's kind of the shared voice. I think in terms of the subgroup that we have that work on our behalf, the communication and engagement group, it's again, I think it's not just the top-down messaging, isn't it? It's about the advocacy that comes from bottom up. And again, I think that we're building an approach around all of that public communication and engagement. And I think colleagues have taken a lot of confidence from the engagement we've had with the public around the simulator tool. So I'm sure Michelle will be too modest to say this, but I think that group acting on behalf of the board is going to grow in its experimentation and its development around public comms and engagement. But we'd welcome the board's support to the proposition that we start moving into some of these stigma campaigns. I think that would be a really positive development if the board would agree that today.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're quite right, Angela, and we'll maybe put it to the board at the end, but I don't think we'll get much disagreement around that. I would hope anyway. Luann, did you want to come back, or was that everything?
No, that's great to hear, and really support the approach Angela's describing there. Thank you. Okay, thanks. Now, Gordon, before I bring you in, can I just check, because Caroline had her hand up and then took it down, and I know that Caroline is not able to be with us for the whole of the meeting, and I just wanted to maybe give her an opportunity just in case she wanted to ask something before she had to leave. But sorry, Caroline, I've maybe put you on the spot. I saw your hand and then I saw it go down. So if you did have anything you wanted to bring in, and then I'll bring Gordon in after you.
Thanks, Chair, and apologies, Gordon. No, I was just frantically typing there. Actually, the point I did put my hand up was in response to Luann's question. However, I popped in the chat. I agree, and I think there is a great opportunity as a large employer to do more and to do it consistently. So that was the reason I put my hand up. However, I will quickly take the opportunity to say that I concur with Luann around the video. I thought the messaging in that, there's always a bit of a heart sink when you go to meetings with such extensive papers, but when it's conveyed so succinctly and so well in a video, it's really, really helpful. So I think that would be incredibly helpful for us to convey in health around the work that's being done. The other thing is around the reassurance for me, and I note that NHS's strategy development is later on in on the agenda, and I hope you will see the absolute connections between the work that we are doing based on the population needs assessments to underpin really the LOIPs and the work on people and place in particular. So from the environmental work to the poverty piece, adults and children, I could see a line of sight between health connection and all of the 15 outcomes and aims. So really pleased about that, and I believe that will set the conditions for health to be a stronger partner around this agenda. So I'll just press send on the bit that I was going to put in the chat, which is you have my full support for the refreshed LOIP, and sorry I need to go.
Thanks so much for that, Caroline. I appreciate those comments, and really heartening to to hear about how aligned your new strategic plans are with the LOIP and things, because that's going to be hugely important moving forward. So thank you for that, and thanks for your attendance today. We appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay, thank you. I'll bring in Gordon. I'll bring you in next. So apologies for that, but hopefully you didn't mind.
Not at all. Not at all. Happy to help. No, continuing this theme. I think firstly, I think congratulations on the refresh. I think the process itself seems to be really well handled, and speaking personally, I'm delighted with the outcome of that process. So congratulations to colleagues there, because I know how much work goes in behind the scenes. Again, I think the video is a really good addition. Thanks very much to the presenters as well for their work. I think as well, it's quite obvious to me that those improvements, I think it was Michelle talked about at the beginning, that are around data, I think community assets and partnership development, I think they've really pulled through. I think what we've got is something really strong here. And I know a minute ago we were talking about boldness and the claim of poverty. It's aspirational, but I would agree with colleagues that that's great. I mean, yeah, aim for the stars, you might hit the moon kind of philosophy. So I think that boldness is to be admired. Maybe a comment, however, is around the economy that a bit like, I think it was Lavina was saying, I'd like to see a bit more of that boldness about elements of the economy as well. In particular, what I'm talking about are the employment and upskilling figures. Clearly, if we look, for example, at, Angela's right to touch on our individual stuff as agencies and then our collective, value add. But if we look at what, the young lady, I think it was Rebecca or something, I think she mentioned she was on Kickstart, which great. So there's DWP contribution. We look at the No One Left Behind contribution of the councils, look at things like the apprenticeship or the National Transition Training Fund. I could go on. But the point really here isn't about that, is there's a lot out there. And there is a lot of support. And maybe, I think it was Luann's point, again, give a reassurance there. You're right, we're not at the start of that journey of the proactive recruitment process. Of course, it differs from employer to employer. And of course, there's more we can do. But a lot of that funding is actually being targeted, I think, at the groups that she was referencing and have been referenced throughout. But essentially, the point is that I think we can be more ambitious. I mean, if we take 400 or 500 being upskilled over four and a half years, I think we have this point about how does that look to the public? I don't think it looks that ambitious, to be truthful. And as it's quite rightly been said earlier on, I take the point that was being referenced, I might be Ishbel, saying, well, but if we hit that, we'll keep going. I totally get that. I think what I'd rather see us do here is set it higher, and we come up with, hopefully we exceed it, and we come up with excuses if we don't. So I think for me, I'd definitely like to see greater boldness around those aspirational targets. And it is a confusing scene at the moment. We understand that, we've still got furlough to come out of for many firms. A lot could happen. But on the other hand, it is a conflicting thing, because we're seeing skill shortages. We're seeing employers who can't get hold of people. So it will be a mixed bag, and it'll be a difficult bag. And I appreciate your point, Chair, as well, about what the shorter term economic recovery plan is. I guess what I'm referencing is the longer term situation. And I just would welcome a little bit more boldness and aspiration around the targets. And maybe I know why we go to a kind of general sectoral approach, but there is no doubt that there are some sectors that will play in more. And again, it's in here, but that digital thing, I think, really needs to scream at us about digital skills. So thank you.
Thanks for that, Gordon. Ishbel, I think, has raised her hand, so I'll bring Ishbel in first, and then Lavina's got her hand up, so it may be on this point, but I'll bring Ishbel in first, and then we'll take it from there.
Thank you. Just to sort of give a little bit more information on the projects and the figures that we've got. So we know that a lot of the other organisations within the Community Planning Partnership have their own programmes, and they're doing their sort of own work to help people into work and to help people upskill and reskill. So these figures are purely for the improvement projects that we have indicated. So that's our figures on top of what's already happening, I suppose. So that's what our aim is.
Yeah, I think that's helpful, Ishbel, because sometimes when we look at this, we think because it's a partnership, that's the collective of everything that everybody's doing, but it's not. It's an indication of the work that we are doing collectively through the partnership. So it's pertinent for you to mention, because I know there is a lot of work within our own organisation, and there will be with others around that. And as Gordon's pointed out there, there's still a bit of uncertainty around the landscape, particularly with furlough still being in place, and what impact that will have when it's removed, because I know there were some quite stark figures for Aberdeen in relation to that when we were looking at possible redundancies and things. I'll bring in Angela on this, because I'm sure that this is on that point, and then I'll bring Lavina in after that. So Angela.
Thanks, Councillor Lane. I was just going to suggest and absolutely hear the challenge from Gordon. I wonder if what we could do is to accept the target as it stands today, and then when we come back to the board with the first progress report on the charters, that Gordon comes back with that challenge around, and again, perhaps what we can do is have a conversation with Gordon offline, just to take him through a wee bit more of the discussion that's taken place in the group that landed that kind of proposed recommendation. So I'm just suggesting that if Gordon was amenable, that we stick with the target as it stands, revisit that when we do our first progress report back to the board, but in between, maybe we can make sure that Gordon's kind of cited on the discussions that have taken place within the group. But I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I think that is helpful, Angela. I'll just ask Gordon if he's okay with that, but that would seem like a sensible approach to me, that we go with it today and we provide that background information and indeed the challenge when the improvement charters come forward. Gordon, are you content with that?
Yeah, the short answer is yeah, happy to agree with what Angela's proposing, and I think the comments that were made about that this is the value add of the CPP is a good one. I guess what I'm saying is when the public look at that, though, they maybe don't necessarily reflect that. So I totally accept and would be supportive of taking it as it is. But if there is something we can do representationally to let people know, because I think a lot of people may take the view that you might see at first sight, which is it doesn't look that ambitious, but actually we have to find a way of aggregating and showing what the whole is. So yeah, I'm happy to take the points that Angela said and maybe come back and we can look more at the totality. I guess that's what I'm saying. We're differentiating between the value add of the CPP and the totality, and it would be really healthy, I think, if we could see both.
Okay, well, we'll take that on board and we'll progress as suggested there around that. I think you're right. It's the messaging sometimes with, the work of the partnership and people just having a true understanding of what that means and how it feeds into other work that might be happening as well. Okay, I'll bring in Lavina next, because that's the only hand that I've got up. So if anybody else has got any questions or comments they want to make, maybe make yourself known and I'll bring you in after Lavina.
Yes, I'm glad that Gordon's spoken up, because that's exactly the sort of things that I was trying to get through to, that we are doing what we can do as a partnership, but Aberdeen University has set up lots of short-term studies that people can go to for 6 months, you know, when they lose their job in the oil industry and could go to the wind industry and all these sort of things like that, or changing to hospitality and other things. Robert Gordon's university, again, are doing similar sort of things. And I think that we should somehow bring that all for the communities to be aware of. And I know Aberdeen University is now a partner, but Robert Gordon's isn't. And that maybe was how the Planning Act was set up. Community Planning Act was set up in 2015. But I think we really have to broaden all of this, and whatever these jobs are that are going to come to the city, because I believe it's 130,000 people employed in the oil industry. And even if 30,000 of them travel to Aberdeen to go offshore, and they're on the books in Aberdeen, then there's still a lot of people in the city and shire who may need some quick retraining to quickly move on to something else, into the transition zone and all these sort of things, that it's all in the development plan. We seem to have put things there without actually making it easy for people to move from one industry to another. I think that's what I'm trying to get across. But if we can realise it, and as you were saying, getting it done for the next board meeting, then that would be good.
Thanks for that, Lavina. I mean, you're right about membership and things. We do have Aberdeen University who sits on the board, along with Representative Ken Mulroy from the North East Scotland College. But the RGU have just joined the Prospers group as well. I think Ishbel's just put that into the chat there to confirm. So they are going to sit round the table there as well. I'll bring in Angela first, and then I think Heather Crabb from the university is also indicated. So I'll bring in Angela first.
Thanks, Councillor Ling, and I recognise the point that colleagues are making around the challenge between the LOIP, which is the partnership activity, versus single agency.
Just sitting there wagging. I'm listening to the Focus Good Board for Scotland.
So I think Councillor Nicholl, I think you may be unmuted at the moment, so we're hearing your conversation that you're having with somebody on the telephone. So.
Everybody's opinion saying.
Shall I carry on, or can somebody?
I think Councillor Nicholl has been muted now, so I think yes, carry on, Angela.
Thank you. I just recognise the point that colleagues have made, and I guess that very deliberately the LOIP is simply is what we're doing as a partnership. Each single agency then, I guess, has to reflect around how it wants to demonstrate its contribution to the outcome. To have got to this point, this has been a massive effort to get to here. It would be quite a challenge to be able to say what's the sum of the partnership activity and then each single agency. So I just want to moderate expectations around that. I mean, certainly if each individual agency wants to start to present their own strategies and their plans against the LOIP outcomes and want that featured within the CPP platform, then that's doable. But I think it would be a huge ask for the CPP team within the council to attempt to do that. I don't disagree that the sum of the ambition and the aspiration is the collective. It's both the LOIP and each single agency. But that, I think it would need the commitment of each partner, including some of those organisations that have been named, in order to reflect that onto the CPP website. So just a bit thoughtful. I don't disagree with the point, but I think that members of this board would have to then commit to wanting to present their own strategies against the outcome, and of course conscious that a number of partners are part of national systems where you're covering the totality of outcomes across 32 partnerships as well. So I don't disagree with the point. I just err on a bit of caution about realistically what we can do by way of the presentation. But there is no shortage of ambition, both in terms of the LOIP and each single agency's current and future strategies.
Thanks for that, Angela. A lot of valid points there about what is possible and what's not possible. But I mean, I think we've talked a lot around the table about the importance of embedding the LOIP and its outcomes within single systems strategic plans, and I think that kind of highlights that aspect to it, that if we're all working towards these goals, whether it be collectively as a partnership or indeed individually, then it is a benefit to the city as a result of that. I'll bring in Heather Crabb, and then I've got Councillor Nicholl next. So Heather, over
Thank
to you.
you, Chair. Really just following on from the comments made by Lavinia and Angela there, certainly what Lavinia said in terms of the programmes that are available at the university, and I'm sure RGU have got equivalents to us as well. Absolutely, these exist. And one of the things that we have done is very similar to what Angela has just outlined there, where we have mapped a lot of our core activities against the key themes and stretch outcomes within the LOIP. And we've also, we are now recruiting to a new post of Vice Principal Regional Recovery and Economic Engagement. Michelle had a meeting with the current interim Vice Principal where we spoke through some of the mapping activities, and that, as a member of the group that did some of that mapping, has been very valuable for us as an institution. I think perhaps what we need to look at doing within the board is how we join the dots, because I'm sure there are other organisations that have done the same as we have done in terms of mapping activities, and it really comes down to communicating that. And whether there is a one-stop shop portal that that information can be posted on and made available. But I think that's something that should be included as we look to the future of the LOIP and the refresh, is how we communicate and join the dots between all the different organisations and activities, because certainly I know from our organisation's perspective, it is happening. It's perhaps how we communicate that that's happening that we all need to think about.
Okay, thanks for that, Heather. I think that's a really useful contribution, and you know, we've talked a little bit this afternoon around that communication message, and you know, I think it's something that we should all be giving thought to moving forward on that aspect. So thank you for that. Councillor Nicholl, I've got you next.
Sorry, I'm showing as being muted, but I'm getting a message saying I've been muted. I'm not sure if my system's not working properly.
We can hear you now. I think what was happening, Alec, was that we were hearing you when you weren't on. You appeared to be unmuted, you know, about 5-10 minutes ago, and we were hearing you on the call. So I think somebody must have maybe muted you centrally. Because we were hearing you coming through. I don't know if you would. So that was the reason. But you are now unmuted. So if you want to contribute, go ahead.
Apologies. No, apologies. I don't know what's happening. I dropped out and I came back in. Apologies. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that. Right. Not seeing any other hands. So I'm presuming that everybody who wanted to contribute has done so. That has been a fairly lengthy discussion, but I think it was, you know, it warranted it, because as I mentioned at the beginning, the amount of work that has gone into bringing forward the refreshed LOIP cannot be underestimated. I think it's been useful for the board to have an opportunity to discuss it in detail. I think I just want to underline the importance of us working together as partners, making sure that the document is embedded within the plans that we have within our own single organisations, because that is what will allow us to actually achieve the outcomes that are within the local outcome improvement plan. I think the other aspect is that I would just try to you know, instill in members of the board that our leadership is going to be key to the success of the LOIP being delivered, because we do have to, when we're back in our own organisations, make sure that community planning is at the forefront. People understand what's involved. You'll see from the development plan that there will be opportunities for further training within our own organisations, and I would encourage people to get involved in that, because not just for those that may be working on that partnership work, but who may be working in order to achieve the outcomes, as we've mentioned there, some single system stuff going on, which will absolutely contribute to us achieving those outcomes. We obviously had the discussion with Luann's question around how we could use that communication and engagement strategy within the partnership to greater effect to tackle particularly the areas we mentioned there, and stepping forward with that public messaging. So I'm hoping that everyone on the board will agree to that, and then we can look to move forward with some of that as we roll out the improvement projects and attempt to make those outcomes. So the actual recommendations we're being asked to approve today appear on page 30. I'm hoping that we have agreement on that given the discussions that we've had today. So are we happy to agree the recommendations as they appear in the report? Not seeing anybody disagreeing with that, so I'll take it that that's agreed, along with that additional one in relation to the communication aspect. Thank you for that. Okay, that now takes us on to item 2.2, which is the final draft of the integrated locality plans. And like the LOIP, there's been a huge amount of work going on behind the scenes in order to bring this forward. So Michelle, I'm going to bring you back in along with our, I think we've got our inclusion managers with us today. I know they've worked alongside public health colleagues to bring the locality plans forward. But I think you're joined just by our inclusion managers today. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct, Councillor Lang. Just by very brief introduction from me, the locality plans, they underpin the citywide LOIP, and they were developed following the review of locality planning we did at the end of last year. You'll remember we agreed to integrate the locality planning model for the CPP with the Health and Social Care Partnership. As you know, the review resulted in a shared description of our localities and our priority neighbourhoods. So we've got north, south and central localities. And within those localities, we've got our priority neighbourhoods, which you see on the screen. That includes 4 new priority neighbourhoods that were identified in the review. So following the review in December, we formed an integrated locality planning group to take forward the recommendations of the review. And as you say, I'm joined by 3 of those members this afternoon who are going to run through the slides with you. I also just wanted to highlight that Anna Gale, Chamonix, Omnis and Elaine McConaughey are our public health coordinators that have been working with the integrated locality planning team to bring forward these locality plans to you. And they really are testament to the strong teamwork in between colleagues, but also the relationships that they've built with community members. So I'm going to pass on to Paul Tytler to talk a bit more about that.
Thanks, Michelle. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Tytler. That's my dog barking in the background, if anybody's wondering. I'm one of the locality inclusion managers for Central Locality. I've been working with Elaine McConaughey, Public Health Coordinator for Central, on the locality plans, and she's on leave this week. As Michelle mentioned, I was going to take you through a couple of slides about how we've been working with communities, both the locality empowerment groups and the priority neighbourhood partnerships. Thanks, Michelle. In preparing the locality plans to cover the whole of the city beyond the previous work in the priority neighbourhoods, it was important that we worked with local people. We had already established the locality partnerships in previous priority areas to develop and oversee those locality plans. We renamed the locality partnerships as priority neighbourhood partnerships to make the link more or clearer with the locality empowerment groups. And those relationships with the local partnerships were critical to the development of the plan. The members there were well acquainted with the community planning and the LOIP, and were able to contribute to discussions not only from that local community point of view, but also the wider locality. Particularly helpful that members had knowledge of improvement work happening over the last few years and the difference that had made. And in addition, a sense of what worked, what didn't work. And an example, I think, from that is that the locality plans now articulate much more clearly the links with the LOIP stretch outcomes and the outcome improvement group projects than was previously the case. Go to the next slide, please. We established 3 locality empowerment groups. They were originally set up by the Health and Social Care Partnership following the locality leadership groups that had been in place previously. As part of the review of the locality planning, that led to the remit of the locality empowerment groups being extended to consider the wider social determinants of health and the outcomes that we're working to achieve through community planning Aberdeen. The locality empowerment groups are open to any member of the community, covering all neighbourhoods, including the priority neighbourhoods. And there's been active recruitment to those groups since the beginning of the year. The next slide, please, Michelle. There's been good engagement across both the priority neighbourhood partnerships and the locality empowerment groups, as well as the wider community. And the consultation and engagement as part of the development of plans has included the third sector, frontline workers, and we've received the strong interest from communities and been further involved in developing the ideas. I'll now hand over to one of my colleagues, Martin Smith, who'll explain the process of developing the plans. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that introduction, Paul. And just for everyone's benefit, I'm Martin Smith. I'm the Locality Inclusion Manager for the North locality. Unfortunately, my co-colleague, Anna Gale, who kindly assisted me with the formation of the locality plan, is on leave this week. So you're left with me to take the helm. Can get the next slide, please, Michelle. So I think a lot's been discussed already in terms of previous reports and in terms of how important data and insight is. And certainly the population needs assessment was certainly a critical driver to inform the scope for the groups. But certainly, the importance of that population needs assessment can't be undermined in terms of the fact that, it can identify where the gaps are and where we are experiencing poor outcomes. It can also help in identify any inequalities. Certainly what we did see, and there was no blank canvas here, but when we went into the 4 themed sessions with the group, we did have an open mind, but we used the data to inform some discussion within the wider LOIP work. Community feedback is very important here. I firmly believe the locality plans aren't anyone's individual document. It's a shared experience. It's got to be shared ownership, but the community have ownership of this, and that's been seen very much so in terms of that sense of belonging and ownership as this has evolved. What also became very clear, as you can see from the slide here, you've got the data and insight and the population needs assessment in your top left, but also when we went into the theme sessions, it was coming across loud and clear, also from the staff session, and in addition, a session hosted by the Health Alliance, that we were seeing some consistency across with emerging issues. And that again was fully supported and backed up when we had the simulator results as well in your bottom right hand slide there. Next slide, please. The title there, it's a shared vision of Aberdeen, and it's a place where all people can prosper. So certainly that's what we're aspiring to. So the locality priorities, okay, there are 3 different localities, but what you can see from each of those there are commonality across the piece. For example, reducing poverty, I mean, a lot of previous discussion has taken place on this and how we can do that, but it goes wider than just the food and the fuel. I think we've also got to look at opportunities to maximise people's potential, develop skill sets, and also allow people to flourish and reach their potential. The digital agenda is firmly here. I think COVID's been a driver for that certainly as well. It's not for everyone, however, but certainly what we've seen is a successful rollout of that sort of Connecting Scotland programme to date, where those digitally excluded have been given the hardware to be more included. Health and well-being is a critical factor. Again, that'll be a partnership approach. Mental health has been made loud and clear from any sort of the sessions that certainly the North locality had. And as we move out of that sort of post-lockdown period, hopefully we can have opportunities to improve health outcomes, more so focusing on that physical activity. And I mean, we've seen some examples there where we've got a project more or less underway within the North locality where
I think you were on mute there for a second, Martin, so.
is that on the last slide, is it?
Yeah, I think what is happening now? What more can we do? Yeah.
Yeah, so what's happening now? So, I mean, I'm firmly of the belief, yes, governance has a role here, you know, in terms of that sign-off, and we've seen that through the CPA Board Management Group and also the IGB yesterday. But it's important, the trick really is about delivery now and ensuring that we make that difference with maximum impact. It's a co-joined approach. So the community connectors are really important here. And what we're trying to see is that, I mean, Paul's made reference to that in terms of the LEG and the priority neighbourhood partnerships, ensuring that the community have that maximum opportunity to contribute. So we've got tried and tested processes in place so far. We've got the testing on small scale, but we've also got the scaling up opportunities where that tests of change have been successful, and it's important that these continue to be vital components on how we move forward. And if I can just pass the next slide, I think Colin Wright, my colleague in South, will take us forward with the collaboration and community empowerment aspect to things. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. So I'm Colin Wright, and as development manager in the South, I worked with Chamonix Omnis from Public Health to develop the South plan. Chamonix has now unfortunately moved on to another role, but the plan was able to be completed before she left, so that's positive. I think we could go to the first slide, Michelle. So I think that a real positive of the plan has been that in working with communities, the issues and the aspects that they were concerned about very much reflected what's in the LOIP. But in all cases, there was a link between the priorities and ideas for improvement identified by communities to the improvement project aims that we are working together to achieve through our LOIP. So that provides a real opportunity for collaborating on shared priorities between local people and the LOIP groups. We can move on now. So you'll see just an excerpt from the plan just shows how everything links together, and in linking together the local ideas with the improvement of project aims. The locality plan should help facilitate and encourage two-way dialogue between partners on the outcome improvement groups delivering the LOIP and members of the locality empowerment groups and priority neighbourhood partnerships delivering on the local plans. There's a opportunity to do that. Can we go back? They very much cement a joint and coordinated approach between the professionals and local communities. You can see from the example here that we've aligned community ideas to our improvement projects to help that connection to be made. Identifying a community connector where available to continue to link in, and also through the locality plans, we've been able to identify communities which have also expressed an interest in testing ideas in their area. So those are already highlighted to the outcome improvement groups and to other partners. We'll move on now, Michelle, sorry. So the benefits of where we've come to are very much around reducing the risk of duplication between what's happening locally and what's happening on a citywide level, ensuring that communities are more empowered to test their own ideas out and to take forward their own projects and share what they've achieved. I think the process itself has helped very much develop a stronger relationship and provides the foundations for encouraging greater collaboration going forward. And it's also been a positive starting point in building the capacity of communities to use tools such as the PDSA cycle to test their change ideas. And I will finish off at that point and hand back for questions or discussion.
Thanks very much, Colin, Michelle, Paul, and indeed Martin for that presentation. I think again it's helpful for the board just to hear directly from yourselves about the process to get us to the point of producing those locality plans. And so, I thank you for your time today. As you've mentioned there, you've not been joined by the public health coordinators for today's presentation, but it's clear from what we've heard that collaborative work has been a key element in us managing to bring forward the plan. So I'll extend the thanks of the board to Anna, Elaine and Chamonix for the work that they've undertaken. Before I open it up for questions, just a couple of comments from myself, maybe. I mean, I think it's safe to say that when we looked at making changes to the localities within the city some months ago, there was a deal of worry, I suppose, and concern from those that were perhaps already involved in the locality works at a neighbourhood level. About what that would mean for them. But I think it's clear from the report that we've got and the plans that have come forward that we've really managed to build up strong relationships with community members who are living both within the priority areas, but also those wider areas as well. And I think that can only stand us in good stead for making sure that the plans that have come forward have the input of those communities, and the support of those communities will be of benefit as we try to deliver on the outcomes within them. They are underpinning the refreshed LOIP, so it's very important that you're working closely with the CPP team to make the links between the aspiration and ideas of the communities that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis and what we are trying to achieve through the citywide LOIP and making those connections. And I think from what I've heard today and what I'm reading in the report, we're clearly managing to make those connections, which is really heartening. So I'm just going to open it up to see if there are any questions or comments on what we've heard from the presenters today, or indeed what's within the report that's part of the agenda. Do we have any questions or comments? Yes, Luann, I'll bring you in first because your hand's the one I saw first.
Thank you. It was really just to say that the locality plans went to the IJB yesterday and they were fully endorsed and supported by the IJB and are really front and centre of the strategic planning process we've got in place for the Health and Social Care Partnership. So yeah, just really welcome them and were really well received yesterday. Thank you.
Jenny, you're on mute.
I'm sorry, I knew I was going to do that. I'm saying it. Thank you, Luann. That was helpful to know that the IJB was fully supportive of that. It's good to know. Lavina, I'll bring you in next.
Unmute, right. I'm unmuted, am I? Yeah.
You are unmuted now, Lavina. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yes. I think it is what has come out of all of this is good. It's all been based on what the community, the Civic Forum, agreed years ago, that because of the constraints of funding to all the locality, all the local partners of CPA had constrained funding, being at the bottom of the heap from what they were getting from government to work with. We agreed that most of the effort from the partners should go into the regeneration areas, and I see Concorth has now joined that. And although I come from what is classed as a more what I don't know what we would call it, not successful, more higher earnings area, that we were quite happy as long as we knew there was a man or a woman we could contact and say, we've had this idea we would like to have in our community. How do we get some help to get started? Or do we need to register it, or what? So out of all of this, is there going to be some way for the communities who are not receiving a great deal of hands-on help in their community, their neighbourhood or community, will be able to say, we've got this idea, how can we get it started, supported, and let us get it off the ground, and we'll do it ourselves afterwards once we've learned about it.
Okay,
so is there somebody going to be coming into place, as that will be under the legs, or will be through community planning somehow or other, that there would be some sort of contact person?
Thank you for that, Lavina. I don't know, Michelle, are you best placed to answer that? I mean, I suppose it's about the wider groups and people feeding their ideas into that, but there is also the thought of developing the locality, further locality, or I'm looking for the right word now, the plans for different neighbourhoods and locations throughout the city, that where there's work going on through community councils and things at the moment. I think about having that. I can't for the life of me think what the term that we're using for those plans are. Are they locality plans as well?
I'm not sure what the term for that is, but I think we're trying to explore a range of different ways that people can get involved. So as you say, there's work already happening through community councils, and we've got Community Council Forum, we've got Civic Forum, Lavina. What we're trying to do is almost make a direct link, as you say, to those people in communities that are maybe not involved through those groups, but they still have a voice, they still have ideas. So that's what we've tried to do with the simulator. In the first instance, we're kind of trying to channel people into their local community groups. So if that's in a priority neighbourhood, it would be through that group, or through their locality empowerment groups. But as I say, we're being really open-minded about it, and how open-minded about how the locality empowerment groups function. So it won't necessarily mean that someone has to be on there and come to all the meetings. There'll be different ways of them being able to input. And we've obviously just had the public consultation on the LOIP and the locality plans. Members of the public came forward, they responded to that, and they indicated an interest in individual improvement projects, and we followed up those leads. And for some of those members, they weren't connected to any of those groups. So as I say, we're trying to be open-minded and explore how we can give any member of the community an opportunity to engage with us.
Yeah, thank you for that, Michelle. Yes, it's just that going back many years, we used to have, Aberdeen had 9 neighbourhood officers who looked after several communities and occasionally went into their community council meetings and listened and picked up any ideas, and they were there, somebody of contact who you could see. Now through that we have Cooter and Bloom, we have the Christmas lights, Cooter Christmas lights, things like that has been started through HELP originally, and then has moved out to be some of the groups are even registered as a charity, so you know they move off and do things themselves. Community Council held their banking for a bit and things like that. And eventually they all stepped off and became individual organisations. As I say, some have become charities in their own right. So it's just that it's a stepping stone. The first stepping stone, I suppose I'm asking, is there some way that if a new idea pops up and everybody in the community says, oh, that would be good, how can we get it? How do we approach it, I suppose, yes. Because there is nobody that I know of that is a contact for it.
I'm going to bring in Angela on this, Lavina. I mean, it was local place plans was the thing that I was furiously trying to
yes
off the top of my head, and there's a lot of work going on around that, around the the empowerment agenda and things like that, and I think that will feed into the process. But I'll bring Angela in just on the point that you were making there about contacts, Lavina.
I wonder, just in terms of a practical, quick solution, because I guess the ultimate hope is that our collective colleagues are so embedded in communities and linked in so well to groups that we don't need any formal channel. But given Lavina's point that perhaps that in the meantime we do need, and I just wonder if colleagues could maybe explore a generic email address for the 3 locality areas as just a way for segueing anybody in, and then we can then of course link anybody up into respective groups. But I think Lavina's looking for a I guess a kind of a key account. We don't have the resourcing to identify exactly at this point, but I think we could do something like that.
Yeah, I quite agree with that. That's why I'm asking if there's going to be some way that if a community who is not getting or needs a lot of help in recovery or regeneration or whatever, that still is a way that they could get some guidance to do it for themselves from start to finish. I don't know. It was just a thought.
No, sorry, that's my misunderstanding. Absolutely. We've got an account called locality planning at aberdencity.gov.uk, and that will be the first point of contact, and that will link in any inquiry into the locality planning team and of course our CLD team. So we need to promote that more then, so that people are aware of that.
Yes, that would be a good idea. Yeah, that's something. It's just something small like that I was looking for. Yes.
Okay, great. That sounds like a plan, and it sounds like there's a space there that people can make that contact, and then we can look to how we support that moving forward. So that's good. Not seeing any other hands raised, so I'm taking it that everybody else is content with what they've read and heard today. So are we content to agree the recommendations that appear on page 125? Yes, not seeing anybody disagreeing. So just happy to agree that, and to extend our thanks to all those involved in bringing forward the locality plans. We appreciate all the work that you've done on the ground, and indeed the work that community members have done as well in order to bring that forward. So you can perhaps pass on our thanks to them when you're next in contact with them. So thank you. And that takes us on to 2.3, which is the socio-economic rescue plan. This is a kind of finalised report on what's happened within that. We have touched on some of the aspects of it in earlier discussions, so I'll maybe just open up to see if anybody has any questions. We do have Ishbel Gregg with us if anybody has any questions within that report. Not seeing anybody indicating. The recommendations are on page 208. Are we content to just note the completion of that? And as was mentioned earlier, we have some of the work continuing, but it's now embedded within the framework of the community planning improvement group. So are we happy to agree the recommendation there? Yes, okay, thank you. That then takes us on to 2.4, which is the locality rescue plans 2020 to 2021. Again, these were locality rescue plans for the neighbourhoods which were brought forward specifically to deal with the challenges that we had in the first year. And again, you can see from the information that we have within the pack that a number of these items will be carried forward and are now included in the new locality plans. But do we have any questions or comments on the locality plans? Not seeing anybody indicating anything there. No. Okay, are we happy to agree the recommendation on page 222? Yeah. Okay, thanks. That then takes us swiftly on to 3.1. Now, 3.1 is a project end report in relation to improve the health and wellbeing outcomes for at least 50% of homeless people, programme participants in the Housing First Pathfinder programme in Aberdeen City by December 2021. And this is a really good news story. We've got Mike Burns, I think, with us today, I'm hoping, Mike was just going to, he was the lead on this. So welcome to you, Mike. Thank you for joining us today. I think you were maybe just going to give us a slight update before I maybe open up to see if there's any questions from the board.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Thank you, Chair, for inviting me along. It's with great pride that I bring the report to the board for all the hard work that was put in relation to the Housing First Pathfinder programme, which was a partnership led by Aberdeen Cyrenians and between 3 third sector organisations, Aberdeen FOI, Turning Point, and a close partnership with the local authority. We put a lot of hard work in on the ground to try and achieve the outcomes that we achieved, and you can see from the tracker that goes along with the report that we consistently achieved the highest tenancy sustainment rates of any of the 5 Pathfinder cities across Scotland. The special mention must go to Kay Dyack, who was the representative of Aberdeen City Council on the board, and the hard work that Kay put into to help us achieve some of the outcomes that we've achieved. And you see both in the Lloyd report and in the tracker report. So happy to take any questions on that, Chair. And as I said initially, very, very proud of the hard work that the partnership put in to achieve what you see in front of you.
Thanks very much, Mike. And you know, I think you're quite right to be proud of what you've managed to achieve here, because as you've mentioned there, we've certainly led the way in the projects that were carried out nationally. And I think it's really pleasing because it's an area where we have struggled in the past in Aberdeen. And it just shows you what can be achieved when that support is put in place, when the resource is brought forward at speed to provide the accommodation and support for people within that, just what positive outcomes you can get. And sometimes as chair, I've been in the frustrated position of saying that some of the improvement projects are not coming forward, to conclusion quick enough. But in actual fact, when you see, what you've managed to achieve, it's quite clear that there's been a huge amount of hard work on the ground in order to do that. So, many, many congratulations to you and everyone who was involved in that project for the results that we have before us. I'll open up and see if there are any questions or comments from the board around that. Yes, I'll bring in Luann.
Hi again, Mike. Nice to see you 2 days in a row. Yeah, it's a great report and great to see those outcomes for some of our most vulnerable people in the city. A few kind of questions really. One I was really interested in the example, I think it's called Patient 2, which showed the difference in how someone is using services. And I wondered to what extent that would be representative of the majority of people. I suppose I just think it gives a very compelling case for really, wraparound care around more vulnerable people. But, should we take that as an example of the wider cohort, or is it a very individual situation? That's my first question.
No, I think, Luann, we can take that as an indication around the whole cohort. And indeed, we had hoped going forward to be able to do more data analysis with our health intelligence partners to show that. The reason for showing that particular graph is because not only does it show the positive outcomes for the individual, But I know that we're all under pressure as far as finance and resources and money is concerned. But when you look at that particular chart, it shows the cost impact analysis as well, and how we might want to kind of use that benefit and use that dividend in some way to increase the amount of support we put around vulnerable people.
Okay, thank you. No, that makes sense.
Did you have any other questions, Luann, or was that?
It was a thing about, I suppose, I'm thinking of this is now embedded and, you know, great to see that stay in. I wondered just about the learning processes that are around this now. So, for example, you know, is there a way of following up and understanding why some people have disengaged? And are there any processes around the people who die in order to sort of understand, you know, maybe what else could have been put in place? I suppose just that continuous improvement approach. And also it linked to that final bit is, are there opportunities for the tenants to get involved in helping shape and develop the project? Thank you.
Definitely, Leanne. I mean, an underlying theme and a theme that runs all the way through the fidelity of the Housing First model is lived experience. So throughout the programme, we had lived experience peer practitioners working alongside service users and bringing their contribution into the development and the delivery of the programme. And as for the learning, I think it's important that as this is mainstreamed and the responsibility falls back onto local authorities, that we understand that one of the most important learnings that came out of this is that homelessness should not be seen as a housing issue, and it should not be left to the sole responsibility of one department within a local authority. It is a health and social care issue, and it's something that we should all be working towards achieving the outcomes you see in front of you. So I think if there's any learning, that we need to try and push that one with national government. And also what we need to do is take from the learning that you can turn people's lives around. I mean, some of the people we worked with on the Housing First programme had cyclical homelessness for over 20 years and you know, have now been in tenancies for over 2 years. You know, so, you know, the whole concept of being tenancy ready, you know, Housing First turns that on its head, and it just shows that what you can achieve, that when you give the people the wraparound support, the right kind of support, and get them into a house, that are a home that they feel is their own.
Great, thank you for that, Mike. Happy with that, Luann? Anything else?
No, just thank you. It's an excellent report. Really good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I'm just having a look, folks. Not seeing any other hands. So if anybody wants to come in, do it now. No. Nothing else. Okay, we obviously have the recommendations on page 252, which I'm hoping we can agree, but just to say thank you, Mike, for coming in and presenting that. As we've said there, hugely impressive results, and certainly pick up on the points that you've made in response to Luann's questions about the importance of what we do moving forward. Because as you've mentioned there, it's clear from the report that when that support is put in place, it can actually achieve some great results, which are of benefit obviously to the people who are within the programme, but also to the wider communities as well. Because as you mentioned there about turning lives round, it's not just those who've been in that homelessness position, it's also the families and things that they're able to reconnect with as well, that we see from the report, which is hugely important too. So you know, great. It's enlightening to see that really positive story before us, because some of the facts and figures we were looking at earlier were you know, less positive, and it shows when we collectively come together what can be achieved. And I certainly hope that we'll manage to get the results continuing now that it's been embedded in our work moving forward. So thanks for that. Okay, folks, I think we've agreed the recommendations, so we'll now move on to 4.1, which is the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. They have their long-term vision, which they are currently wanting to consult on. So Shay Ewing is with us today. So welcome, and I think you are going to just maybe give us a little bit of a sort of updates you on where we are and what you're looking for from community planning partners on this moving forward. So I'll just hand over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. If you don't mind, I'll share my screen and just give you a short presentation which is supporting the report and documentation that Area Commander Bruce Farquharson submitted. Hopefully everybody can see the presentation okay.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So essentially this is a presentation. The Scottish Fire and Rescue Service have developed a long-term vision and we're putting out for public consultation. The draft vision has been developed in partnership with staff following a 3-month staff engagement exercise. This included surveys and independently facilitated workshops. We are now seeking public views on the draft vision before we finalise the long-term vision in autumn, and it is a 6-week consultation. The S4S will evolve as we respond effectively to changing needs of Scotland's communities. We want to continue to evolve as an organisation and we want to build on areas of good practice, provide a constant approach on how we engage with our communities and identify how best we can support them. We set out what this means for the future of the service in a new 10-year draft long-term vision, which marks the beginning of our new journey. Our ambitions remain those we outlined under transformation. However, transformation was linked to changing firefighter terms and conditions. To do that, we needed to secure a pay offer. This pay offer was rejected by members of the Fire Brigades Union in February 2020. We will continue to work together with communities, our public sector partners and key stakeholders to help shape our future direction. The ambition is far wider and based on extensive staff feedback. It also encompasses our aspirations as an organisation, including our commitment to tackling climate change and reflect on the lessons we have learned through the COVID pandemic in terms of how we work effectively with partners and protect our communities. We want to ensure our stakeholders agree with our vision, and that is why we are seeking your views. Ensuring the ongoing safety of our staff as they support Scotland's communities remains a top priority for the future. The vision also builds upon the reflections and learning over time and how change is managed within the service, embodies our commitment to fully engage with our staff and stakeholders. Our vision, or our mission should I say, working together for a safer Scotland. This has not changed as we still think it's relevant. This is about working together internally across departments and externally within our key partners. For a safer public, we are not just about fire, but also about public safety. Purpose: to work in partnership with communities and with others in the public, private and third sectors on prevention, protection and response to improve the safety and well-being of people throughout Scotland. This is the purpose set out within the fire framework. A new fire framework will be consulted on later this year, but we know our purpose will remain the same. What is key to our purpose is working together with local communities, not just again in terms of fire response, but for safety and the well-being of the people of Scotland. Strategic intents. To set out how we achieve our purposes, we have developed 4 strategic intents. They are all equal in importance to us. What we mean by being recognised is that our partners and people know that we can do what we can do to support our communities beyond our emergency response. Strategic intents are: staff are safer and better supported and more satisfied and empowered. Our communities are safer and their well-being is improved. We're more adaptable in responding to changing risks across and between communities. Apologise. And our wider contribution to Scotland and our communities is recognised. We have 4 principles. They are that we will be progressive, people-centred and inclusive and connected. An example of progressive is we want to be an organisation that focuses on continual improvement, do more to prevent harm and innovate to improve our emergency response. We want to explore new technologies to enhance our ways of working and use data to an insight to support our evolution. People-centred, an example, we want to continue to engage and build on our relationships with staff and stakeholders. We want to be an open and transparent organisation that helps our staff and communities reach their full potential. Inclusive, this is about looking like and reflecting our communities, valuing different people and are strengthening our commitment to diversity. And connected, being at the heart of the communities we serve, understand their needs and shaping the service in partnership, and also about using technology better to connect with the communities that we serve. Underpinned within the principles, we have 8 priorities. Again, they are not in any hierarchy order. We see them as the same. And those are: our service delivery model will meet Scotland's changing needs. We will be innovative in our use of technology, data and information to change how we work. We'll be an organisation that works in agile and smart ways. We'll invest in developing leaders throughout the service and train our staff to the highest standards. Partnership working will be at the core of how we work. We will value different views and experiences. We'll be driven by a deeper understanding of the needs of our communities, and we'll be more environmentally sustainable as an organisation. As I say, this is a 6-week engagement process, and we'd encourage you to share your feedback through the online survey, or you can email your response directly to the email address that is on the slide. The links are also contained within the report that was submitted by Bruce Farquharson. The next steps is that we will obviously review the feedback and analyse and report a final long-term vision will be approved by the SFRS board in August. Work begins on the SFRS strategic plan 2022 to 2025 with further public consultation to follow. Thank you, Chair, and I'm open to any questions.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Chair. That was really useful to just to take us through that, the step-by-step aspects of it. I'm just looking to see if we've got any questions on what we've heard. Not seeing any hands raised. I mean, obviously, it's important, I think, that we feed back any comments or that we've got through the process, Shay, so they can be looked at moving forward. Just remind me, when's the closing date for the consultation? Is it 6 weeks from now, or is it?
Sorry, no, the closing date is, just bear with me. Should have had that at hand.
Sorry, it was just, I was looking there to see if it was.
Yeah, it's the 18th of July. It started on the 7th of July
Oh,
to the 8th of July.
Okay, July. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so if people, you've got a little, just a wee while to do that, maybe 10 days or so. So if we can encourage everybody to get, oh, Luann, sorry, I'll bring you in. Do you have some questions, Luann?
Just kind of really a reflection on the last topic that we were just discussing under the Pathfinder. I wondered how targeted your public engagement is going to be so that you hear the sort of seldom heard voices, and I suppose thinking of the people who might be most at risk from a home fire. So is there targeted work to hear those voices?
Yeah, all LSO management teams have been asked to share this information in consultation as widely spread as we can. And there is a spreadsheet for all managers to go on there and record the engagement sessions they have. So the idea is that hopefully we'll manage to get across this consultation to as many of our partners as we can, and then share that to targeted members of the public, etc.
Okay, you happy with that, Luann? Okay, not seeing any other indications. So just to thank you again, Shay, for coming today and presenting that, and hopefully you'll get lots of consultation feedback from members of the board in relation to the plan. We'll look forward to seeing it coming forward following the consultation once that's complete. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that now takes us on to 4.2, which is NHS Grampian, the strategic plan they're currently developing. I think we've got Susan Harold with us today, so welcome, Susan. I think you were just going to give us a presentation around some of the work that's happening with the NHS Grampian in relation to that strategic plan.
Thank you, Councillor Ling, and thank you very much for the opportunity to come along to the board meeting today. I'm joined by two of my colleagues. I'm Susan Harold, Senior Planning Manager with NHS Grampian, and I'm joined by Jenna Young, Fellow Planning Manager, and Louise Ballantyne, who's our Head of Engagement at NHS Grampian, and we're part of the team developing the strategy. So I'm just going to try and share my screen. I've got a few slides. Can I just check, is that sharing?
It is.
It is, good, thank you. So our NHS Grampian strategic plan, we're at the very start of that process and went live with our first phase 1 engagement last week. So the aims of coming along here today really is to set out our timeline and the approach to the development of the plan, which will run from 2022 to 28. And to get agreement and support from the Community Planning Board around our approach and how we develop that very much in partnership with all of our key partners. And in particular to seek any advice around your expertise on how we can maximise opportunities going forward to ensure that we are contributing significantly to that overall population health and a lot of the challenges that we're all collectively facing, as others have been describing this afternoon. Oops, gosh, sorry. Sorry, I've lost my presentation. Sorry, can I check? Are you still seeing that?
We are still seeing it.
Sorry. Okay,
we've got aims up at the moment.
Super, thank you. Sorry about that. So in terms of our 5 priorities for renewal, these are the 5 priorities Caroline Hiscox as Chief Executive has outlined. And that is building a single system of public health across the North East for the population. Our workforce across the health and care system, absolutely critical to that and shaping that, and absolutely enhancing the good work that was done in response to the pandemic between all our services and partners and continues, and how do we enhance those relationships and really ensure that seamless care and pathways for the population, irrespective of which part of the system they're accessing and which services they're accessing. And absolutely acknowledging, as others have said, that a lot of the challenges facing us pre-COVID are much more, have been compounded by COVID, and how do we ensure that we make that step change and we're addressing the inequalities which are significant. And as others have also mentioned, how do we embed and accelerate the digital changes and opportunities available to us as appropriate, appreciating there are positives and negatives to some of that. So in terms of our approach going forward, it is absolutely working together with all our partners and very much adhering to the Scottish Government and COSLA guidance about planning with people. And in doing that, we're very much focusing, as Luann mentioned there, on the seldom heard groups, really listening to those in our communities, those with lived experience, carers, unpaid carers, our staff, all of our partners and service users, and very much building on a lot of the networks that are there. It's been obviously this afternoon hearing about the LOIP and the locality plans and priority neighbourhood plans. So in terms of our timeline for development, I mentioned we've gone live with phase 1, and that commenced last week with engagement packs for public and for staff, and an online survey on social media. We've been very much working in partnership with colleagues in the health and social care partnerships in City, Shire and Murray. And obviously our link is with Alison MacLeod in Aberdeen City Health and Social Care Partnership, a strategic planning lead. And Alison would have been here today to jointly present, but is chairing the strategic planning group. But very much our approach going forward is working with the respective strategic planning leads in the partnerships in terms of how we can align our planning processes and particularly our engagement processes. And that's even more critical given the wide engagement that's already happened in terms of the LOIP and the locality plans. So very aware that we do not want to be risking any engagement fatigue amongst communities and individuals, but that we're absolutely building on the engagement that's been done to date and looking for those opportunities in terms of how we as a health organisation can inform and support a lot of those aims that have already been outlined. So the engagement period is running between June and August. That's not exhaustive. People will still have the opportunity to be feeding in, and that's really to inform what is important to people. It is that health needs assessment to complement the needs assessments that's been done in the localities, and very much aware around the absolute impact of the social and economic on the individual's health and well-being as well. So how do we obviously align that and get that cohesiveness in terms of what's important to people and in terms of the services that we provide and the health and the well-being and that wider encouragement around prevention and self-management. We'll be using that period once we have all that data to look at what are the key messages and how is that going to shape our strategy going forward. And again, there will be bringing together our launch group, which consisted of all our partners, including fire, police, SAS, IJBs and wider partners. So bringing together again that group to sense check that, and again ensuring that alignment with the key aims of others' strategies. And fortunately, our timeline is I think working quite well in terms of the discussions we've had with Alison, having just completed the LOIP and the locality plans, and the next stage of obviously looking at the strategy refresh for the City HSCP2, and how can we look at what are the cohesive and collective aims that we can have in our plans and ensure that shared language and shared messaging for elements that we are working together and that's recognisable for the public. There'll be a second period of engagement around testing those key messages, and we're working with a view to have our draft strategic plan by the end of the year and going to our board early next year for approval. In terms of the engagement, we are aiming to be as extensive as possible to very much focus on the seldom heard and going beyond the established groups and networks to those that perhaps don't regularly get their voice heard, and looking very much to the locality empowerment groups around that and the networks they have and the links that they have into school and education, with the view that children are our future generation and user of services, and how do we get those links in now and to hear from them, our ethnic minority groups, and also very interesting, I've heard Mike's presentation, the homeless and in terms of their lived experience and their health needs, and how do we feed all of that in going forward. So planning a range of mechanisms to try and encourage that engagement and flexibility around that. So building on the established groups and equally the engagement done to date, and how we build on that, and identifying where there are gaps and where we would want to focus, and very much looking to community planning partners and neighbourhood groups and all the special interest groups as well that already have established relationships and networks to assist with that. So in summary, our plan obviously 22 to 28, aiming for sign-off, as I said, very much building on relationships that we have, and absolutely trying to take it to that next step to ensure where we can show those clear links between the social economic impact, the health, and in looking at the aims and the strategy that we're developing, that we're absolutely meeting those aims collectively, and we're all doing our bit from our respective organisations. Very keen to come to the board at this point, and that's really in response to not wanting to come with a plan already written, that this is very much about, you know, a blank sheet, going out, you know, finding out what is important and what do we need to be focusing on, and ensuring that we're all working collectively as a wider system of partners to make sure that we're all achieving those collective aims for the population. Very much that we are working with public staff and all of our partners, trying to target as far as possible that we can those seldom heard, you know, to bring them into those conversations and to be as inclusive as possible. And very much from today, as I said, drawing on the expertise of the board around any other suggestions as in terms of how we can ensure we're joining up at the right time with the right people. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Susan, for that. That was really helpful, I think, for the board, just to get the run through of, you know, obviously what's happened to date, and you know where you're going with that strategic planning. I was actually part of the launch group, so you know, I find that really helpful, the discussions and things that we had. But you know, it's clear that you're pulling information from various sources as you shape the plan up, and it doesn't you know, go by me the fact that obviously NHS Grampian has more than one community planning partnership within. You know, you actually service 3 within that. But I suppose the message from myself is that you know, I would suspect that the local outcome improvement plans for the other areas will be of, you know, similar things coming forward, particularly around that inequalities piece and the link between you know, health inequalities and you know, other aspect poverty and things like that as well within that. So it's, you know, it's pertinent that we have that local outcome improvement plan feeding into those strategic plans within NHS Grampian, just as it is with other partners in the city as well. Are there any questions or comments for Susan? I realise it's maybe quite a lot of information for some members of the board that maybe hadn't been at maybe some of the other sessions and things like that. But is there any comments or questions anybody would like to raise at the moment? Not seeing any hands up. It's always unfortunate, Susan, when you're down the bottom of the agenda when it's been a longer meeting than normal. But I think from what you're saying, there is opportunity for people to feed their views in through the process that's continuing until you know, obviously you'll present the plan for agreement in February of next year. So there will be opportunities, I think, for partners to feed that in, and indeed, I presume further discussions that we'll have at the board in relation to the LOIP will give us an opportunity to feed in NHS Grampian reps that are on the board as well, Caroline and Susan and things, you know, feed in any information that we might have around that. So I'll give people one last chance just to see if there is anything. No. Okay, just to say thanks so much for coming, Susan. Really appreciate that, and you know, wish you well with the development. It's not an easy task, but
thank you, and I'm very happy to come back and provide any updates as well, either to this board or to the management group or other groups as you feel appropriate.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. Somebody's just asked in the chat there if it would be possible to maybe get a copy of the presentation that you had, Susan, maybe just the slides, so that people could, you know, maybe just have that for reference moving forward. I don't know how
Yes,
you do
certainly.
this.
Yes.
Okay, appreciate that. If you forward it to us, and then we'll obviously cascade it out to members. That's great. Thanks so much for your attendance. Appreciate it. Okay, right, that now takes us on to 4.3, referral from Aberdeen City Council meeting on the 21st of June. This was a motion by the Lord Provost in relation to the Edinburgh Declaration and in relation to biodiversity. Pertinent, it's really just here for reference because it was recommending that we made sure that we continue to embed the UN Sustainable Development Goal pathways in the strategies and things that we are bringing forward. And of course, we'll be aware from what we've looked at today that that is very much the case. And also we were instructing the Chief Officer to work across the Council with Community Planning Aberdeen and other partners to embed the commitments to the Edinburgh Declaration in the strategies and plans and work streams that we have. And given some of the comments that we heard earlier around the LOIP and that biodiversity piece, it would appear that members of the board are keen to make sure that that happens. So I take it that we don't have any objections to that, and we're happy with that referral and the recommendations that were being made there. Yeah, okay, thank you. Right, that just takes us to the very last item that we've got on the agenda, which is the proposed meeting dates for 2022. I can hardly believe that we're looking at meeting dates for 2022, but as we're more than halfway through the year, I think it's important that we have that. So hopefully that gives people an opportunity to get those into the diary, and there aren't any issues with that. I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I'll take it that we're content with that. And so that now concludes the meeting for today. Just to thank you all for your attendance. It's been a slightly longer meeting than we would normally have, but I think we've had some hugely important items on the agenda, the LOIP and the locality plans. And so I think it was fitting that we gave it due attention, and indeed we had discussion around the content of those reports. I started by expressing my thanks to everybody that had been involved, so I'll end the meeting on that basis as well. Huge amount of work has gone on in the ground, right across the partnership, and indeed with our communities and engagement that we've had with the public in order to shape up those plans and arrive at the outcomes that we've got. And hugely thankful to all those who've played a part in that, and look forward to working with you all to make sure that we're delivering on those. I think somebody's asked if we can share the video through the networks, and I think that would be a good idea. Let's cascade that as far as we possibly can, and we'll look at that engagement and communication exercise moving forward to ensure that we're cascading as much information as we possibly can about the community planning partnership and getting as many people as possible involved. So thanks again for your attendance today, and look forward to seeing you all at the next meeting on the 15th of September.
Yeah.
Thanks, folks.